Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. We are excited to join you once again with our open mic approach, and our whole idea is to give you an opportunity to interact with us. You may call in if you have a question or comment, 858-251-6111, or you may go online to godradio1.com. And either way, we would welcome hearing from you. The motto of the Voice and Viewpoint is that people without a voice cannot be heard. And so we take pride in our 65 years of serving San Diego community, but now we have expanded that through our internet access to beyond the city and the state, and as Dr. Thompson knows, beyond the country. We got several countries that are following us internationally now. And we check our analytics every week in terms of who stays with us and what their views are. And you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Voice and Viewpoint website. And so we stream and we try to make this vehicle available because we're living in some very tumultuous times. And we got some things we're going to talk about this evening. And we hope among them will be something that will touch you and spark you in terms of what you need to be involved in getting done. Okay, Dr. Thompson.
Well, Dr. Warren, it's good to be here for another Wednesday. So much is going on throughout the United States. I do want to let everyone know that we are being streamed on the Voice and Viewpoint Facebook page, the GOD Radio 1 Facebook page, on the GOD Radio 1 Twitter, and also on YouTube tonight. And so we're being streamed all over, as well as on our platform, godradio1.com. So in our app, so you can tune in and get this for you. We want you to make this an interactive night. If you're listening in on Facebook and you have questions, just put it up in the feed. We will address it. If you, again, would like to call in, the number is 858-251-6111. Man, Dr. Warren, we flew through the first 6 months of this year. I don't know about you, but I blinked and we was in June.
I know.
You know, and I'm like saying the first 5 months, and now we're in the 6th month. Half the year is almost gone, and yet still we still revving up.
We're still revving up, and even though we're in the 6th month, when we look at our calendar, though this is just the 5th day, it's getting away and just getting started with all the things that we have on the drawing board, the things that are going on that are happening, and you know, the old expression, time waits for no one, so it's not waiting for anyone here. Okay, and so we have some local issues that I want to mention to us. I'd like to start off first with what's happened with the Board of Supervisors, not only the hiring of Ebony Shelton as our new Chief Administrative Officer, but reminding people that while she's the first black woman and she presents herself as an Afro-Latina to hold that position, she is the second black to hold a position, the first having been Clifford W. Graves, who held that position in 1985 before he left, and he came to San Diego from the executive branch. What's interesting is also the salaries, Dr. Thompson. At the time that Graves was here before he left, he was making an annual salary of $78,000 a year. The county had 12,000 employees and a budget of $1 billion. Today, Ebony takes over an organization where she's making $395,000 a year. She has 20,000 employees in the 5th largest county in America with a budget of $8 billion. And she started off at the age of 19 as a payroll clerk. She's been in the system for over 25 years, and she's just worked her way up. And she was the chief deputy to Helen Robin Myers before Helen left. So she's got an awesome responsibility, but she is the one person who already knows where the money is and what's going on. And so this week we have an article about her appointment, which becomes effective on June 14th. Next week, we are publishing a timeline in terms of the politics behind the appointment and the things that happened leading up to Nora Vargas as chairperson, almost anointed to the position by Nate Fletcher to supersede him, who has gotten herself into some hot water, especially with the African American community and even with labor, based on some leaked emails that went out. And these emails were somewhat profane. They identified individuals, women in the African American community, and she's been sending letters saying that wasn't her, and people hacked and rearranged. But Nora was also a member of the board of Southwestern Community College back around 2017, 18, or 15, when they had to hire a consulting group from UCLA to come into the college because of all the allegations of racism and discrimination, and what people perceived was an effort to make Southwestern Tijuana North. And so we don't know, and then we we understand that at least one of the people named in the emails that was put out spoke up and has asked for forgiveness, and that she not be that there not be efforts made to call for a resignation, and that in itself is interesting considering the person and some of the politics. So we're not going to name names. We're just going to not be distracted and keep our eyes open going forward, because the county is the entity that really has all of the health dollars. They have the health care dollars. They have the lion's share of the homeless dollars, because they have the homeless task force, the regional task force, and we participate in it in terms of having a shared agreement. But the city of San Diego is sovereign like the county, so we wouldn't be able to work together if it wasn't for this.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we have the revised budget. There's going to be a meeting this Friday on it. The independent budget analyst has put out their final version of what's going to take place, and we still, I think, are suffering losses in terms of equity, and the department there and the things that are happening. We just have a lot of issues on our plate as a city. And so I have an editorial this week. We have a report on a study on equity and pay, which we paid in a consultant firm $250,000 to do. And I have an editorial this week talking about the impact of equity, blacks in the city of San Diego, and the extent to which black people are continuing to lose in the game, and they're losing even more so when they're lumped in the definitions of the study with people of color. Because when you say people of color, that takes Latino, Asian, and everybody else, and it minimizes what is already a microscopic level of participation for African Americans themselves. And so, folks, we need to wake up, be woke, pay attention, start looking at what's going on as if it was right at our door, because it is. Homelessness is going up because people are being evicted, and people are being evicted because landlords are raising rents, and the salaries are not keeping up with the rents, and the judges of the system are landlords themselves. And so people are going from house to car to homelessness on the street. And then we're wondering, why is it happening?
Well, Dr. Warren, I think that, with all the things that are going on, I think that we have to learn to be proactive. We're very, very quick to protest and things of that nature for a moment, and then we go back to doing what we normally do. How about this? We personally, I think both you and I agree that there are a lot of buildings that are being built, a lot of high-rise apartments that are being built that are standing empty. Why don't we take them apartment building by apartment building and stand outside of them and protest them until they give us what apartments are filled and what apartments are not filled? Because the reality comes in is that I believe that there is not a shortage of housing. I truly believe that there is a shortage of affordable housing. And I believe that when your buildings are vacant, you get all these major tax write-offs until you fill it.
Well, I always say, Dr. Thompson, and I've been looking at this for quite some time, the issue is not affordable housing, it's available housing. There are two problems with your suggestion. First of all, many of these buildings are being built by venture capitalists. So these people are not here. They don't live here. They don't have any roots here. They're just putting their dollars out where they think they can get an investment. San Diego is eighth largest city, a growing place, a desirable destination. Housing is up, buildings are new. It's a signal for white folks and money to come. And so this is what's taking place. Almost a year and a half ago, I started an effort to get the building permits for all of the buildings that have been allocated or approved for construction in the past 5 years. And to this day, I haven't been able to get the information because the permits tell you not only who built them, whether they were built to be apartments or condos, and what they were intended to be. All you need to do is go down the waterfront. You know, you see Manchester, who spent almost 15 years to get his hands on that waterfront. But he got that waterfront property, okay? He's the same man that built the Marriott and the Hyatt. He's the same one that was going to put up, hotels up north. He's the one that has a institute building on the campus of USD, and he's got money. He's the one who bought the Union Tribune just so he could get the building. Mm-hmm. He dismantled the Tribune, sold it to dismantled the Union Tribune and sold it to the LA people, and got rid of the equipment, the trucks and everything. And now that property, which was adjacent to what was the Tribune building, which still stands, is built nothing but affordable, or let us say available apartments in there. And it's very hard nowadays to get an apartment in San Diego, a 2-bedroom apartment for less than $3,000 a month. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's in a city where people are not making, they say you need to make $30 an hour minimum just to try to breathe here.
Well, my favorite thing is that, and even with that $3,000 a month, that doesn't mean that you might not have freeloaders, freeloaders that didn't pay rent but seem to run through the door, and be with you there. Ms. Taylor put up most developments have to go through community planning, and she said if more people were present and aware of this fact and participate, some things could possibly change.
Well, that might be true, Ms. Taylor, but let me give you the scenario, and that is unfortunate the way this thing plays out. First of all, most of the community meetings that people say are publicized, we're a newspaper. We don't get the notices. Mm-hmm. And so, what do? Pass out flyers in the neighborhood? Mm-hmm. That's not the way you're supposed to give notice. It's on the website. Well, how many of the people in San Diego are on the internet? Or even go to the city's webpage, or go to PriceNet or Skynet, whatever that site is where they list the bids and stuff for the city that people don't get to see. Yeah. And so, all of this minimum awareness and participation is planned. Mm-hmm. It's a planned exclusion that we have. And remember, I keep reminding folks here that 49% of the residents of San Diego County are renters. And so if that 49 would ever get activated, Marcus Garvey used to say if the sleeping giant would wake up and get registered and start voting, we could change all of this in a very short period of time. But the whole idea is to keep you in a minimal job, working 2 and 3 jobs to make 50 cents. You're never going to make ends meet. That's why they call ends. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is to give you a false sense of hope and expectation while other people lay on the beach and enjoy this paradise that folks come to visit from all over the world. And we live right here. And I bet you can count the people that drive across the bridge and catch a sundown on Coronado's beach.
Well, Dr. Warren, being the romantic person that I am, Coronado Beach and Silver Strand and all those places were frequently, in my courting days. Now in my older days, I use it as a time for relaxation and just walk along the beach and reminisce of the courting day.
Well, you don't have to walk along the beach. You can go. We used to go over there and take a bottle of sparkling cider and go over there around 5 or 6 and just sit there because you got the tourists coming down from Hotel Del who've come halfway around the world just to see the beach. That's the same beach that my late wife used to take the kids for the grunion run. When people were catching the grunions and eating on the beach there. And
Now, my question, have you ever ate a grunion?
no, I've
Okay.
never, and it never appealed to me. To me, it's like a moving sardine that I can't.
That's what I thought. With all that work that you had to catch by hand, when you could just go down to the corner store, get you a couple of tins of sardines, and be done.
Yeah.
And I have to say this because, social media is so funny. They got this new thing on social media that they said they have smoked canned oysters, and they call it the poor man's oysters Rockefeller. You open up a can, you drain it, and then you put some Parmesan cheese and everything, put it in the oven into the cheese, and they call it the poorest man's oysters Rockefeller. I'm like saying, they take stuff that we used to say no, for like Spam and potted meat and everything else, and now they're trying to make it a delicacy.
You know what? Look, 50 years ago when I was in the military and I'd have field duty, I would carry me some cans of smoked oysters and a small thing of hot sauce. All right. Pour the juice off and just eat the oysters out the can. We didn't try to warm them, fire them up, or whatever. We just ate the stuff because we needed something else to eat while we were out there. But all of this fancy stuff that they give, it's like a restaurant at one point in D.C. started selling fried chitlins. Who ever heard of frying chitlins? Okay. I mean, you just will be having meat skins or something. But, people do all kinds of things to get attention and to draw folks in to try and all that, while the rest of us are still just trying to survive,
Now, one of the things that I will say, to Ms. Taylor's point is a lot of things that we're trying to do now are people want to be spoon-fed. And for us to really make moves and for us to grow, we're going to actually have to seek out information. And then when we receive the information, we're going to have to make sure that everybody else. It's like, once we get through the door, instead of just closing the door and say, I got in, y'all get in yourself, we need to not only go through the door, but once we get there, kick the door down, prop the door open, make sure that as many people can come in as possible. And then, like I said, if we give you the knowledge and you refuse to use it, then that's shame on you. But if we then have the knowledge, but then we block you from receiving it, because there's certain things like they say that there are available properties out there. Well, I went to the website where the city said there were available properties, and when I went to the website, guess what it said?
What?
No properties available. So I'm getting double messages. Either there are properties out there for rent or for buy from the city or not. But the website, says one thing, but then people are saying differently. We have to make sure that the information matches.
Well, we do, but this problem's going to be with us. Meanwhile, we got people. This is the first of the month, and we have a lot of issues on the table. We got a Medi-Cal issue with changes going in terms of people having coverage. And many people are being driven from Medi-Cal to cover California. We're getting ready to do some things about that so that you don't find out that you don't have coverage at point of need when you can find out earlier. A year ago, next month, little yellow envelopes were sent out about all of these changes, and the way they were mailed, there was no campaign to let people know what was coming. So a lot of people didn't even open the things. They just put them in the trash. Then when it came time to get renewed, they found out that they didn't have coverage. And so, the scripture says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. But it's not just a lack of knowledge, because the knowledge is there. But we need to be motivated to pay attention, because nowadays stuff is being hidden in plain view and right in front of us. Mm-hmm. And because people know we don't read, then we don't have a defense. Well, it was right there. Didn't you see it? No, because you weren't looking. And we need to pay attention to it,
Yes. So let's go to national news. So much is happening. What's his name? Mr. Trump, the convicted felon. So felon Trump is still complaining. Let's talk about that because they started to bring out sound bites when Hillary Clinton was up, and they were talking about the things that she might be convicted of and everything. And he said back then, anybody who was convicted of a felony should not run for office and should not be able to do it. I mean, we're hearing these sound bites, but yet he's now a convicted felon, and yet and still.
Well, of course, he never means that these things apply to him. And of course they don't apply to him based on the way, the way that he operates. But I think that we have some very serious issues here because it appears that the Republican Party has officially replaced the Ku Klux Klan. They're just wearing suits with red neckties now as opposed to hoods and sheets. When the Speaker of the House, who is number 2 behind Kamala Harris to be president, stands up and talks about the Supreme Court getting involved in a state conviction where the Supreme Court has no value, no role to play, number one. And this man is a lawyer's lawyer, considered an intellectual, who is just totally twisted. And so what amazes me when I listen to these Republicans, I watch them attach Dr. Fauci, I watch them go after Garland as the Department of the DOJ. I'm watching them make threats to the president and his family and what they're going to do after the election. Mm-hmm. And these are people who know. These are people who took an oath of office. They swore to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Mm-hmm. At any other time, people who violate that office would be impeached, brought up on charges, and put out of office. This Republican Klan takeover ignores the rules. And Johnson, the speaker, stands before the people and talk about we're going to follow the rule of law. When Trump was convicted by 12 jurors, 34 charges. It's been different if it had been half conviction, half acquittal, but 34 charges in less than 12 hours, he's convicted. And you want to blame the president for it when the president had no hand in it. Okay? And so this is a very serious time because these are subliminal efforts to undermine government. The threats against Braggs, the threat against the judges, the threat against the jurors. The whole idea is that MAGA extreme right is going to threaten anyone that seeks to hold Trump to a standard that we establish as a people for everyone. And I believe this is the shocking part, Dr. Thompson. This week, a survey was taken of European nations, and these nations have decided that Trump's going to win the election, and they're drawing up contingency plans for the first time in history to see how they're going to deal with America in the post-election era, because they anticipate that there will be no certification, that it will go to courts, and they also have an additional contingency plan that deals with the violence that they predict will be in the streets of America as a result of Trump winning. Now, that's very significant when our allies are deciding, have already determined that the president is so weak that the convicted felon is going to win no matter what.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, black folks are trying to decide whether they're going to stay at home, sleep through the election. Well, I don't really like Biden because he looks weak. The question that's being asked every day, and they got footage on TV on the news to show, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? 4 years ago, where were you in the pandemic? 4 years ago, where were we in terms of George Floyd's murder and the protests? Where were we with 1 million people now dead from the virus and loved ones and empty seats at the table, as the president often reminds us? And now we're going to go and vote for the very clown who wanted people to drink peroxide and who didn't care about how many people, said it in an interview with the Washington Post. Yeah, he knew about what happened back in January, and he's given an interview in May and June of that year that nothing is being done. Nothing.
Well, one of the things about it, I think that people have to pay very, very close attention when we talk about conspiracy theories as well as planning. Now, if people are not paying attention, they've been planning Trump to be president all the way back to 2015 when they started the cartoon with The Simpsons. That was a subliminal message to that whole generation that Trump should be president, and they had him scheduled to be president in 2024. They had him being president earlier than that. So basically, there has been a plan and a subliminal messages to all the little Simpson lover kids, and because that used to be at one point the most popular show among children, especially Caucasian children.
Well, all you have to do is read the front page of The Voice tomorrow, and it'll be online. And it's a story. The story is called The Death of America, and it's based on Project 2025, which is the plan that you're talking about, which the Heritage Foundations Institute started in 2015 as a blueprint for the transitioning of American presidency. And so now they have put out Project 2025, and I outlined in this week's paper the things that that project would do. The project would dismantle the FBI, Homeland Security, eliminate the Department of Education, get rid of the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communications Commission. It would reinstitute the death penalty and call for swift execution. It would activate the 1802 law that would allow the use of the military against civilians, so that they would go out and round up those people who had been declared political enemies of the president. All of these things, the Department of Justice would be gutted and rendered useless and ineffective, if you will. And so this plan is detailed, over 900 pages. Hundreds of conservative organizations, intellectuals, and scholars have worked on the components of it. They would have a massive hiring situation that would come in with the president. And that's because of the number of people that are career civil servants that would be terminated and fired. Because in last time around, there were many people in those positions that would not do the illegal acts that Trump was calling for because they violated the jobs and the oaths of office these people had. So they're going to recruit a whole new army of people. It's almost like what happened in Germany, where they run out and recruited people, and it was the people with the swastika on their sleeve that took over positions that civil servants had who might have been Jewish. In this case, if you're not a Trump supporter, you're the same as a Jew in Nazi Germany.
Yeah. And one of the sad things about it is that they talked about the election being stolen. I have never seen so much tomfoolery and this being oblivious to so many different things. And the reason why I said that is because how do you not convict people that tore up the Capitol? How do you call them prisoners of war? Or what is it called them?
They call them political. They call them patriots, and they call them hostages.
Yeah, and hostages.
Yes.
They had a plan to kill sitting representatives if they could have got to them.
Yeah.
I'm very shocked from the young lady from San Diego who thought that Trump was her Superman, and that she had bullets didn't penetrate her, and they said, if you come through that door, we will have to shoot you.
Bobbitt, and they shot Bobbitt and killed her there.
And I ain't heard nobody say, what a tragedy. I haven't heard her family speak up
against
against
the
it.
Republicans, they've been speaking up about it. Oh, they've spoken out, and they've tried to make a big deal as if she was just brutally murdered, and that wasn't the case.
No.
Because they were going to try. The only thing that stopped them from coming through that door was when that gun fired and they saw her get killed, and they realized that the people on the other side had weapons and they would shoot too.
Exactly.
And many of those people that came there brought their weapons with them.
Exactly.
And so, no, we got major issues. People are still being arrested. We got the states in which they have arrested the fake electors that have tried to get in. They were going to take over and Pompeo, when he was there as Secretary of State, he knew this was going to happen. I will never forget the time between the November election in January, he was on a news program, and someone asked him about the transition, about power and Biden becoming president, and he just kind of chuckled and said, "It's not over yet." So he knew about the plan, and this was an elaborate plan that they had.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Pelosi, who insisted on convening and going forward with the certification, they would have succeeded if it had been delayed.
Yeah.
And this is the fear now, because Mike Johnson, sitting in Pelosi's seat, he's going to try every trick in the book to delay it, unless we send enough Democrats to the House of Representatives to change the order so that the Jeffries and the Democrats can control it. We're going to be in trouble.
So what do you think about Donald Trump going to speak to the Libertarian Party? And his key word is, if you want to win, you're going to vote for me. If you want to lose, keep voting the same way you're doing. How arrogant and disrespectful was that statement?
It's not arrogant, Dr. Thompson. You see, what people keep missing is Donald Trump is only the symbol of the racism that people want to see surface and reclaim America to the extent that it eliminates due process, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all those things. So he can go speak to anybody, they're going to hear him, because there are people under those party banners that are white and they want America back. And that's the bottom line. That's why we have the push on terms of stopping abortions and going after contraceptives. But at the end of the day, the Caucasians can't have enough babies to offset that.
But the reality is that if we gave it back to them, they couldn't sustain it, because America cannot be America without the African Americans. They can't be American without the Latino Americans.
You miss it.
All they need is one day without a black person and one day without a Latino person.
You miss it. You miss it,
and
Dr.
it'll shut it
Thompson.
down.
You missed it, Dr. Thompson, because they're not going to do without the blacks or the Latinos. They're just going to alter their status and return it to what it was before. Slavery can be reinstituted.
Well,
And under the 13th Amendment, the one instance where slavery is openly permitted is where a person is convicted of a crime. Would you believe?
Yep.
Okay? And so we got people testing the waters. Can a convicted felon vote? Can he hold office? We had a president once before who spent some time in jail, but he did it because of a moral principle that he had against something that was going on. This man is convicted. With the conviction goes the surrendering of rights, passport, the right to have a weapon, all of these things. They can put an ankle bracelet on him. They're not going to put Trump in a cell. I don't care what. I would not believe he will be put in a jail cell. And what we're seeing then is a manifestation of the two standards for America. Because a black man, no matter what he does, he's going to be locked up. He's going to get the key thrown away, as evidenced by the number of black men in jail in relationship to our population and the things that people are in jail for. So no, Trump is not going to spend time, but we are giving too much thought to Trump. We need to start paying closer attention to the institutions and the people surrounding him, because that's where the danger is. He's but a figurehead.
Yeah.
The danger is the ones who will implement what he wants under the coverage of him being the one speaking, but they'll be the ones doing.
So basically, there's a puppet master that's dealing with this puppet. And, I appreciate that, because Dr. Warren, he's one of the biggest clowns I've ever seen. And yet and still, you cannot tell him he ain't smart. You cannot tell him that he's not sexy. You can't even tell him that he's orange, because he will not see that at all. So my question, Dr. Warren, is strategy moving forward, especially for people of color. What is the main strategy? I think I know it, but let's just talk about the main strategy and what has to be our clarion call at this point.
The main strategy for us is to understand that the last nuclear weapon that we have against Trump, against the Make America Great extreme white and right wing, is the vote. That's the last weapon against them, is the actual vote. because there are more people in this country than there are that handful of radical crazies that are moving us in an alternate universe. And we have to wake up. I don't have people coming into the paper asking for voter registration cards. Not only should blacks be voting, but Africans and other people of color who have acquired citizenship. Do you know the naturalized citizens now will vote quicker than those of us who were born here with the right to vote? Because we have decided it's not important. We have drank the Kool-Aid and say it doesn't matter, and it does matter. It matters when everything can hang on one vote. One vote.
Yeah.
And we had Supreme Court decisions before the court got corrupted. There was major cases that talked about one man, one vote.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. Biden has came out with a new precedent and bill about the border. Let's talk about that.
Oh, yes. You know what? The border bill is late. It should have been done long ago. There's hypocrisy. For Republicans to complain when they talked about the border and when the legislation came up in the Senate, they refused to vote. They refused to vote for it. I have always felt that the border needed to be closed. The people who are apprehended should be put on planes and sent back to the countries that they came from. Now, there's a lot of folks going to get mad when they hear me say that, say, oh, that's so inhumane and all that. But you know what? I'm going to give you a clear example. No one made these people leave home and come now from all over the world. They're not just coming from South America. They coming to Mexico from everywhere in the world because this is the path to get into America without any problems. That is a very dangerous precedent. We need to be shipping people out. I'm sorry for the families and the little kids, but their parents made a decision to bring them through the barren straits. We didn't send for them to come through it. I'm sorry that some of the people listening here have relatives who are trying to come into this country. That's why we have an immigration process. And I'm going to show you just how contradictory and hypocritical this whole thing is. Let me take my car to Mexico, hit a cow or a chicken on the road, or have an accident without Mexican insurance, and see, don't I end up in jail over there? Over here, you do something of that, you don't have insurance, you don't have papers or green card, you can't be put out, they're not going to bother you. Once you get here, now you can get Medicare, you can get allowances, you can get food. All you have to do is run up to an immigration officer and throw your arms around them and say, I surrender. And your life is already better than it was when you were under one of those, aluminum blankets just a few hours before. And so we need to pay attention. Yes, we do need immigrant labor for agriculture. Americans are not going to pick strawberries. We are not going to bend over and pick tomatoes or lettuce or whatever. We ain't going to do it. We're too lazy. And
Well, hold on. Americans won't do it for the price that they willing to pay.
They won't do it even when they get paid. They're going to fight against it because 90% of our folks here are not used to any hard work. And now we did it back in the South on the plantation, and then we aren't going to do it. Of course. And so they bring people over. I remember in the 60s, we brought people over under what was called a Bracero program. All right? Dr. Nesco Galazzo was the labor person working for education and labor. And these people came over here. They did the migrant thing. They picked the fruit and the vegetables. They got paid and they went back home. Even in the last year, there was about 4 busloads of men who came into this country with work permits. The buses picked them up when they came across the border and took them to the farms where they had contract work waiting for them. And one man in particular said, I will be working until September, and when I collect my pay, I'm going to go back home to Mexico and finish building a house for my family.
Yeah.
That's what people were doing. But we're not supposed to just be an open policy and let everybody in, and we can't just get tough on black people like we want to do on the Haitians when we want to let the Ukrainians come because they're white. So, yeah, let's bring the white people in ahead because we're losing white people in terms of birth rates. The number is down. Okay, and what's happening? The Mexicans are having more babies than anybody else. The Mexicans are taking back the country one baby at a time. Okay, all of these allegations, and it's racist, and these are the people that are. Yeah, we do need to control the border. I say not controlling the border is like sitting in your house with your front door open and your gate. Your family sits down to eat, and a rush of people just come right on through, clean the table, and keep on out the other door. And you can't do anything because you didn't close the door. The door needs to be closed. I applaud the new figures, but they still can get in. There's still loopholes in it, and it needs to be dealt with. Mexico is responsible for not closing its southern borders to stop people from coming north the way they are, and now they're complaining. Obrador is complaining that we should send people back and not put them back across the border. Well, maybe we should. We were airlifting the Haitians back to Haiti after we decided that a welcoming scenario had run out, but we need to pay attention, folks. We need to get involved.
And I tell people all the time, if my door is open and I'm sitting down to have dinner with my family, if you walk through and take all the food off my table, make sure you understand that when you go through that other outside, that outlet, if you don't go back the same way, I got a trap for you on the other side. I think that one of the things that we have to just be very mindful is simply this. If we don't know the strategies, if we don't know what the plans are, then we will be suckered every time to believe that things are going a certain way. In your city, that is the first part of your step. Everybody talks about national campaign, but you better know what's happening in your own city, because there are plans for your city that you don't even know about. When people thought that they were building the trolley and that it was just so that we can all ride the trolley so safely and everything else that nature, but they didn't pay attention to all those people that were buying up property along the trolley before the trolley was even talked about. Now they're seeing that there was a plan. So in everything, Dr. Warren, from local to regional to state to national, there is a strategic plan for outcomes, for who's in office and what things are being pushed. Nobody's paying attention to the Supreme Court, but they get ready to stack that Supreme Court, and if Donald Trump gets back in, you might as well throw that out the door. You're going to probably have 25 Supreme Court justices.
Oh, well, Thomas is not going to resign until Trump gets in, okay? Unless through an act of God he dies. And, this is a scenario is not new. When Ronald Reagan became president, there was a bill in Congress called H.R. 1. And one of the things that people could remember then was back in the 60s, late 60s, we could still see in the 70s, we could still remember that when World War II broke out, all the Japanese Americans were rounded up and put into these detention facilities, all right? They lost their homes, their property, the whole bit. To this day, we're still making restitution to some of these people. Well, what we don't realize is that after the riots in the 60s, Congress decided to reopen many of those bases that had been closed when we had a surplus and start re-outfitting them with the intention of making detention the order of the day if there was more rioting. As a matter of fact, to this day in Washington, D.C., there's a provision on the books called preventive detention. And in Washington, D.C., they can arrest you and hold you indefinitely in spite of what the Constitution says about your right for a speedy trial and a hearing and all that. It don't go there. They didn't put it in place. And so let's look at the building that took place. They started building walls around communities and calling them gated, if you will. If you want to see a very interesting community, just go over to Talmadge or Kensington, where you got one street that comes in and it winds through all kinds of streets, but at the end, there's only one street in and one street out.
Yeah.
Okay? And so all of these little urban planning things are being done with the walls going up and the gates, and the whole idea is when it comes back the next time, we're going to keep people out. And what else happened with this movement following then? After the 54 decision, we had white flight from the cities. But after they realized that fleeing the cities wasn't the idea, and after they got control of the state legislature, then the whites decided that, okay, we're going to go back and renovate the city, but we're going to kick the people in the city out. And if you go back in history, the Roman Empire, the Greeks, and all of past civilizations, the wealthy people lived within the walls of the city, and the masses lived outside,
Exactly.
who had to seek shelter in the city when the threat came to them. And so we're not students of history, and so we just let things happen. One of the things Thomas Jefferson said, which is so prevalent to this day, and it kind of coincides with the inscription on the archives, Jefferson said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
Yeah.
And we are asleep at the wheel, folks.
And I mean, and the thing about it is everybody had these little things, stay woke, get woke, and all the other stuff, but they don't realize that they're sleepwalking and they're not paying attention. So much is going on. Let's go back to the city of San Diego. We just had, in the county of San Diego, we just had an Afro-Latina put over as the chief
Administrative officer.
Administrative officer. Well, now the police chief has now retired, and we have the new police chief in Wall-In. And we're now looking at a new captain for the
Fire department.
fire chief. So a lot of things are changing very quickly in our city.
Are they really?
Yeah, well, my question is simply this: new police chief. Do we have a winner, or do we just have more of the same?
I think you have a man who has a good heart and good intentions, but I don't think that his heart and intentions are going to be any match for the ongoing hatred, disrespect that so many officers on the street have against people of color. We still going to be guilty of living while black, being stopped, handcuffed, curved, all of these things. And yes, there's some good police officers, black and white, on the force, but there's still that element out there that's not being weeded out, who thinks that their badge is a license to mistreat people. And unless that can change, and the police chief can't change it because the police department is governed by the contract that it has with the police union. The police union has put all the safeguards that it wants that really neuters and castrates the chief. You don't hear people getting fired. As a matter of fact, the mayor has the authority to fire a police chief. Never used it, haven't fired anyone. The chief administrative officer, who happens to be our complexion, I'm not going to call him black because I don't have any respect for him, but he's over 5 departments. He's supposed to be the one that carries out the administration of the city in terms of the things that the mayor wants done under a strong mayor form of government. And he is as weak as a wet noodle that should go back to Houston, Texas, where he came from, because he's not demonstrating any leadership here. I've told it to him here. I tell him to his face. I'll keep saying it, that as long as we have people in positions that are supposed to be meaningful, but they are meaningless, then we are going to still be in trouble.
So my question would be consistently, how do we hold all people in key positions accountable? I never knew that I could call somebody the N-word and not be African American, and then have African American people say, well, let's go back for forgiveness. But yet and still, when we had an African American that read something from the Bible, they said crucify him.
Well, you know what? Let's remember that African Americans are people like all people. The color of your skin does not give you a uniform sense of righteousness. We have some very bad people in our race. That's why black people call some other people niggers, because they represent what a nigger is to folks in terms of lack of character, morality, and standard. You can be a nigger and be white. So all of this, the N-word, the N-word. There are niggers in all races of people who disrespect the rights and life and freedoms of others, and who take advantage of people. That's the colloquial attachment to the term. Now, we got to understand that the whites in the South use the term because their ability to speak was so bad that they couldn't say Negro because that's the masculine of black, and Negra is the feminine of black. So since they couldn't get the O, they just said Negras. And they couldn't say grasa, they says negas. And so now it comes off that way and it becomes a slang. You see, it's intended to be a derogatory statement. What most people don't understand is, like in that movie Rush Hour, that black folks took what was an insult, which they couldn't stop people from using it, and turned it into a term of endearment when talking to each other. And that's something that the intellectuals miss. They can't comprehend that. Oh, this is so offensive. I can't stand to hear someone use a word. But yet you can treat people like they're niggas with your own little personality quirks and hang-ups and prejudices. And so what's the difference between you saying it and you doing it in terms of how you treat folks?
And my thing, I think, would be is that, I think that also when we consistently say a word, we also ingrain that word into the culture and into people's minds. And then it becomes like we become numb to it versus I don't want our nation, our kids, our young people to become numb to that derogatory word and look at it as a word of infection.
And I don't either, but I do want us to understand the meaning of the word, okay? Because if there's a word that we use that's worse than that, it's MF.
Yeah.
And they don't even understand where that word came from or how that was inculcated in slavery, okay?
Well, we here at GOD Radio, thank you for abbreviating that word.
Of course I would abbreviate it, okay?
But you might as well just give the history on it since you're going to bring it out.
Well, the history of the word is real simple, that the slaves were not considered people, they were considered chattel. And so when they had healthy males, they looked at them the way people look at horses today in terms of breeding. And so they would use them to breed the women, and many times they bred them with their own mothers. But the slave owners didn't care about that. All they cared was they had a male who was virile, and they had a female who could get pregnant, and if the female could drop another baby, then that's another slave for them. That's where the term came from. That's the insult. Now, that word is a bigger insult to me than niggers. Yeah. For someone to even use that term, because it's a horrible expression, and it points to the depravity of people and the inhumanity of being folks. And then we have the victim adopting the inhumanity of the term, you see. So we just need to not get so social media educated that we miss out understanding how we got here, what is right and acceptable and what is not. No, it is not acceptable for somebody to walk up to me and call me a nigger. I'm not going to tolerate it, no matter what color you are, because it's offensive. But at least understand when you're speaking what you're saying and why. That's why we have so many people with limited vocabulary. All they can say is, you know what I mean? No, I don't know what you mean. Go learn some words. Go learn the language and learn how to speak. And then you can convey what you mean instead of through vulgarity and profanity, okay? And that might take a little effort.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm finding as the demise of our culture and our kids, the limited vocabulary. Now profanity seems to be the first method of speaking, and it's not even out of anger anymore. It's just literally every other word. You got an F, you got this, you got that, you got this vulgarity, and it becomes common. And I'm like saying, when do we say enough's enough?
Well, they don't even understand the F word if they knew the origin of it, okay? Mm-hmm. And the letters stand for familiar, unauthorized cardinal knowledge, okay? And so that's what's made it an offensive term. It was not about somebody making it what it's become today. But again, we don't bother to understand what we're saying and how we're using language, and therefore we miss out. One of the things I always admired about Malcolm X, and I'm so glad I had time personally to spend some time talking with him in my youth, I admire the fact that while Malcolm X was in prison, he read the dictionary from A to Z. So he had a vocabulary, and he had the ability to express himself. And if we learn the words, we could be a powerful influence in our community, in our own lives, in the lives of our family. But how are we going to educate our kids and treat our loved ones with respect and dignity, and our elders and we don't have any words. We don't have anything other than, you know what I mean, you know what I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that, I'm always putting out the challenge that if we know better, we can do better. And the thing about it is about how we do it. And I tell young people always respectfully, I said, we all had gone through generations where in our generation, there were certain things that we do, like the big afros, the big afros. Now, the thing is, how big can your beard grow? But, beards were a big thing way before now. Is this coming back as a new fad? And then, now it's the dreads. But I remember that we used to wear our hair braided all the time.
Well, I think the sisters should look at men very carefully, all right? Because how they mimic the standard will give you an idea of what you're getting. The beard, most of them are dirty. They're not trimmed. They don't look right. You got the young ones trying to look old with a beard. You got the old ones growing beards that's so big that birds and creatures could live in them, and they're not taking care of them in terms of it. I look at it and kind of chuckle. When I was in my 30s, I had a beard and a fro. And no, I don't want any hair on my face at this point. And I don't care who else has got it. No, I'm not going to take my belt off and drop my pants just because everybody around me is doing it when they don't understand that your pants are hanging, because what that meant in prison was people were punching you in the butt. But no, you want to be out there and look like everybody else. Okay? All of the money and time wasted on stupid imitation rather than understanding that you have been created as a unique person and God has given you a talent and an ability. And if you just take time, you can get to know who you are and come to the full use that he intended for you.
Well, Dr. Warren, this has been, we'll call this show, Keep It Real, from the desk of the editor with Dr. John Warren. Boy, you gave it to him just straight up and with a force. One of the things that we do want to do is just encourage you all as we're talking over these topics and we're bringing this up. We want to make sure that we are making strong communication and hearing your voice. I want to send a shout out to Vicki Carrington. It's good to see you, and please tell Pastor Carrington that we say hello and we appreciate you all tuning in tonight. And to all of our listeners from around the nation and the world, we want to appreciate you all for tuning in. Again, if you ever have any topics that you would like to us discuss and us to confab about, please let us know. Write us a letter, send us an email, drop us a line. Better yet,
Come on the program.
Yeah, download the app.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So that we can make sure that we are connecting with each and every one of you. Dr. Warren, any final words?
Oh, I just want you to take out a little time for prayer, be thoughtful, realign your priorities, and know that you're here for some purpose other than yourself. Until then, be blessed.
Y'all have a blessed evening.